Hi guys, it's Carrie again. How are you? And welcome to week 2 of Your Life on Purpose. This is the review and release segment. And as per the rest of this program, it is not perfect still. And that's okay, right? Because we are agreeing that we are going to move into our destiny, move into our future without being perfect and without trying to put that perfectionism on us, because that's what keeps us paralyzed. So for example, I would never have gotten week 2 done if I had continued to try to bang my head against how I was going to get the sound for the music little video thingy to work and still deliver this to you and still give you really good quality sound, which I'm using with my little microphone here. So I apologize if you have no sound. And I will also go on to say that this segment might be imperfect because, speaking of sounds, our kids are home today. My husband's working in the other room. There's a landscaper outside, of course. So it might be a little bit noisy here today, but I just wanted to give you that heads up and let you know that it doesn't matter, because it's not going to stop me from living out my purpose of helping you to live out yours. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so welcome again to week 2. We are, see what I did? I turned myself off. Okay, so this is review and release. This is step 2, week 2. This is where we are going to take a good look at everything that came up for us last week. All of the stuff that we dug deep to kind of uncover, and maybe you're still uncovering it a little bit. Maybe you struggled with it a little bit. That's okay, because we're still playing. This is not where there's going to come a time later in the class where we're going to start digging deep, and we're going to start getting some really concrete action steps in place. And we're going to start really kind of setting some stuff, not in stone, but we're going to start writing some stuff down and taking concrete action. There is going to be a time for that, but that time is not yet. Okay. Right now, we're still playing. We're still just kind of playing around and letting come what will come. Okay. So during this week, what we're going to do is we're going to review our what the lists that we made from last week. So make sure you have those handy. If not now, you don't need to have them now while you're watching the class, but you are going to want to have them available when you do the homework. Okay. So when you do the homework, make sure that you have your list available from last week. And we're going to identify and understand synergies and intersections. So we're going to talk about synergies and intersections and how they relate to what we learned last week. And we're going to talk about those today. We're also going to identify our number 1 passion, joy, skill, etc. All of our number 1s. We're going to identify what those are, because when we know what our number 1s are, we can be a lot more focused. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to learn about responsive energy. I'm going to define that for you. I'm going to help you recognize it when you see it, and I'm going to help you understand how that plays into your life's purpose. And we're going to understand the power of automatic negative thoughts in your life. And I'm going to introduce you to the bouncer, and I'm going to tell you about the bouncer. He's a really interesting dude. So I'm going to tell you all about him. I'm going to tell you how he operates in your life, and I want you to be aware of him and get to know him. Okay. And then we're going to identify obligations that weigh us down, the shoulds and the have-tos in our life, and we're going to work on a plan to release them. So things to remember, things that are really important about the review and the release process. Number 1 is, again, still nothing is set in stone. We're still just playing. It's so important to remind yourself of that, because very often in this stage, what happens is really big dreams come up, like big, humongous, reach for the star dreams come up. And with those big, humongous doom and gloom fears come up too. And so I want us to just remind ourselves that we're just playing, right? There's nothing that's saying tomorrow you're going to go out and do this big, humongous, amazing thing, right? Because what happens is then you get a big, humongous, amazing fear. And that fear just makes you shut down and go, I don't want to play anymore, right? And I don't want you to do that. So I want you to just, when you start to feel that way, I just want you to say, just remind yourself, hey, we're just playing here. We're just playing. We're just having fun. We're just playing around with some ideas. I'm writing some stuff down. It's not a big deal, okay? So just remind yourself, nothing is set in stone, okay? But I want you to remember too, that part of the review and release process, the release part, is that destiny chasing takes focus. Now, one of the things that I'll just mention here is destiny chasing also takes stamina. So before you do any of this, make sure you're taking care of yourself health-wise. That means making sure that you're getting enough sleep, making sure that you're getting enough whole food, energy, food that is good for you, that's going to help you do what you need to do. And exercise. All of those things are going to help you chase down your destiny better. But for our purposes this week, destiny chasing requires focus. And you can't be focused on your destiny if you're messing around with a whole bunch of obligations and yucky stuff that you really don't want to be doing. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the purpose of that is because by doing that, it helps you clear away the emotional, mental, and spiritual clutter so you can focus on what's important. Because when we have to do this adulting stuff, a lot of times you end up doing a lot of stuff that you don't really want to do, but somewhere along the way, you got this idea that you were supposed to. You got this idea that you have to. And maybe in some cases, let's be real, you do have to because you need a paycheck. I totally get that. And I'm not saying that you should like go and move and build a cabin in the woods and become a hermit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. Okay. But there are ways that you can free up time, free up emotional, mental, and spiritual energy so that you can focus on the stuff that's important to you and you can get rid of some tasks that just suck. Okay. So we're going to work on that. Okay. And there may be some things that are your like 2.9. I don't know how that would be. No, I don't know, really close to your number one, but not quite. And that's okay. There may be some things that you really, really want to do, but that are going to have to wait until later. And it's okay because again, we're still just playing. Just because you decide that this is going to be your number one thing for right now does not mean that something else can't become your number one thing later. And that can be the thing that you work on, right? So again, I want you to take a very playful attitude toward this, because if you don't, you're going to get all freaked out. And I don't want you to get freaked out because that's not a fun way to live. Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about those number ones since we just kind of started, we started there. So identifying your number ones helps you to focus and prioritize. So for example, if I know like what has happened to me recently, that writing has become my number one, right? And it's really paid off because writing has gotten me a whole lot of responsive energy. It's gotten a whole lot of stuff. So if I know that writing is my number one, then I can prioritize writing every single day. And that's what this whole class is about, right? The whole class is about living life on purpose, which means making a choice, having the intention every day. It's about no longer coasting through life, right? It's about, I'm not going to just go ahead and go along with what I've always been doing because it's not giving me the fulfillment that I want. And so I'm going to live intentionally. Now, sometimes that means that I might choose not to write, right? It might mean that I choose to film a class instead of writing my book. But it means that every day I know what I should be prioritizing. And if I choose not to prioritize that for that particular day, at least I know I'm choosing that. That's empowering, because so many times think about this, think about you wanted to sit down and watch a movie all day long. You've been sitting there going, man, I cannot just wait to put my butt in my chair and watch this movie. I've been saving it. I'm ready for it. I have my popcorn already, and that is all I want to do. And that, knowing that you were going to have that intention, knowing that that's what you were going to do, is going to be so amazing. And that's the choice that you're going to make. But somebody calls you up and goes, I really need to talk to somebody and come out for dinner and talk to me because I need somebody to talk to. You might go out because you feel like you have to, but you're going to be resentful of it, right? But if you're consciously making a choice, right? You're consciously saying, you know what, Susie Downer, I really care about you, but tonight I have other plans. I'm happy to come and talk with you tomorrow. You're making a choice that's more empowering. You can even make the choice, hey, Susie Downer, I totally get it. Sometimes I need to talk to somebody too. My movie can wait till tomorrow. That's okay too, but you're participating in the decision as opposed to just kind of coasting through life and doing things out of guilt or fear or whatever. Okay. So identifying your number ones really helps you to focus and prioritize, and it helps you to put your energy and it helps you know where to put your energy and where your energy will get the most bang for your buck. And I'm going to teach you how to recognize that in a little bit. But really, because I know that the reason that I choose writing to be my number one right now is because that's the one that gets the biggest bang for my buck right now. That's the thing that is going to help me have the most influence. It's the one that gets the most reactive energy. It's the one that helps build my platform. It's the thing that's helping me grow my future. So I'm choosing to spend time on that, to prioritize that. Okay. Now the trick with your number ones is you have to be brutally honest. Okay. So I know sometimes that's a little hard, but you have to be really, really brutally honest about what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And sometimes we're uncomfortable with both, right? Sometimes we want to be good at something and we're not. And sometimes we don't want to acknowledge how good we are at something, whether because we have a false narrative in our head that it's bragging to own what you're good at, or maybe because you just don't realize it. And responsive energy is going to help you figure that out too. So I'm going to help you with that. Okay. So to identify your number ones, you want to identify the number one most defining moment in your life. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example. I can honestly say, now, please understand, I'm not necessarily talking about certain life events. Like obviously becoming a mother was a life-defining moment. Getting married to my husband was a life-defining moment. Those are all really good and well and good. And those might fit in with your purpose. By now you probably have, maybe not, but you probably have some idea of what your purpose is. So for me, I'm really kind of talking for me personally, vocationally, when I'm trying to do this. So in that category, the most defining moment of my life would probably be the time that the day that I decided to start a direct sales business. Not because I became this amazing success in direct sales, not at all, but because by making the decision to become a direct seller, what happened to me was I entered into a whole new realm of a mindset, of a way of thinking that helped me to realize that, hey, I can do life a different way. I don't have to have that corporate 9-to-5 soul-sucking job. Hey, I can have freedom. I can be my own boss. Hey, I'm a leader. People want to follow me. Hey, I can surround myself and purposefully be around people that are doing this kind of stuff that I want to do. And it created a framework in which I could make a whole lot of mistakes, and trust me, I made them, a whole lot of mistakes. I could learn a lot about what I was capable of. And that set the stage for me to go out and become an entrepreneur and to have faith in my writing, that I could do something with my writing. So when I look back on it, even though I'm no longer necessarily in direct sales directly myself, I coach a lot of people in direct sales, but I'm not specifically in direct sales myself. That experience was an incredibly defining moment in my career, and I'm so grateful for it. So that's one of the reasons why you want to identify your most life-defining moment. And you're obviously, you want to identify your biggest passion, the thing that you are so passionate about that if you had to give up everything else vocationally or whatever category you're working in, personal, vocational, health, whatever that might be, take this number one passion. If you had to get rid of everything else, what's the one thing that you would work on? You want to identify what that is. You also want to identify, obviously, what's the one thing that you're really, really good at, right? So for me, I'm passionate. So I had this life-defining moment of becoming a direct seller, which helped catapult me into this world of entrepreneurism and all that kind of stuff. I'm passionate about my faith as a Christian, right? I'm passionate about Jesus. I want to learn more about Jesus. I want to tell other people about Jesus. And not about the Jesus that they think they know. I want to tell them this crazy dude who loves them like insane, right? And I'm a really good writer. And so all of those things are kind of coming together to form a reality that I never would have imagined for myself if I hadn't done this work, right? Okay. And then, of course, my number one joy. And again, aside from my family, and I want you to feel free to step outside of those things that are obvious, right? Unless they're intertwined with your thing, okay? But my number one joy definitely is writing and leading and sharing with people and inspiring people. One of the things that I absolutely love is when I hang up the phone with a coaching client and they go, before we hang up, and they say, oh my gosh, I feel so much better right now. I feel so much clearer. This helped me so much. Thank you so much. Or when somebody comes back to me and they say, you know what, I had this experience and it made me think of what you said back then. And I remembered that and I made a different choice because of what you said back then. That's the kind of stuff that just makes me so joyful because I realize, oh my gosh, I actually made a difference, right? So when those kinds of experiences happen to me, I want to do more of it if I know that that's the kind of thing that brings me joy. Okay, so that's the key though, is you have to understand, why are these things so important to you? Why are they your number one, right? So I know why becoming a direct seller is so important to me. Even though I'm no longer in direct sales, I know that it set the stage for me to catapult myself into this entrepreneurism thing, right? I know why Jesus, I've had this incredible experience meeting Jesus, and I want to share with other people, right? I want other people to get to know him in the way that I know him. I know that my skill, writing, is my number one skill, because that's what people are telling me, that my writing gets the most responsive energy. And again, we're going to talk about that in a minute. And my number one joy, I know that that's my number one joy because it makes me feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives, right? So you have to kind of understand not just what they are, not just identify them, but you also have to understand why they make a difference. Because you might say that your number one experience, most defining moment, was the day you met your cat, right? Okay, fine. But what made that day so defining for you? How did it change you or transform you to catapult you into the next part of your life? That's what you kind of want to look for. Okay, finally, I'm going to tell you about responsive energy. So responsive energy, when you talk about responsive energy, you want to think about, what is the one thing that you are absolutely amazing at? And one of the ways that you can tell, because everybody has at least one thing, right? And so now is not the time to be shy or modest, okay? You have one thing. You might not know what it is. So so you're going to pay attention to responsive energy about it. And one of the reasons that you might not know what it is because, first of all, you might be buried under this whole big idea that it's bragging or it's immodest to say that you're good at something, or to think too highly of yourself. Some of us have that narrative going on in our mind. And what that does is that just shuts down our ability to really shine and use that gift that we've been given to bless other people, right? And that's why God makes us good at stuff. He doesn't make us good at stuff just so that we can enjoy it. He makes us good at stuff so that we can play our role in the world. And so if we're not willing to own what we're good at, then we're not going to be able to live out his will for us fully in the world, right? So we have to be willing to own it. I'm not saying that you sit up there and be like, I'm so good at this and I'm the best. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that quietly in your own space, you acknowledge, hey, God, thank you for giving me this gift of writing. Thank you for giving me this gift of music, of song, of whatever. Logic, whatever your thing might be, because it's important for you to own it so that you can live it out in the world. Now, the other reason that you might not know it is because it comes so easily to you. And that's where responsive energy can really be a gift, because you can, sometimes something comes so easily to you that you don't think it's any big thing. And other people look at it and they go, oh my gosh, how did you do that? I could never do that. You don't understand. That's amazing. I'm in awe of you. I want to be able to do that. I wish I could do that, right? So when you pay attention to that, responsive energy can also come in the form of money. If somebody's willing to pay you for something, that's responsive energy. If somebody asks you for help with something, that's responsive energy, because they're seeing something in you that shines in this particular area. So don't be afraid to pay attention to that. So look for things when people, if you're not sure what your one thing is that you're really good at, or your two things are, pay attention to things like awe. Sorry, I went too fast. Awe, amazement, and longing, right? So if somebody goes, oh my gosh, I am so in awe of the way you sing. I'm so amazed. That is so good. I can't believe it. And you do it like it's so easy for you. Or longing, like, oh, I wish I could do that like you do. So I'll give you a few examples. So for me, it's writing for sure. You know, people will look at me and go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that you wrote that so quickly. People will ask me to write certain quick little things for them. Now, my friend is a singer, and she was rehearsing in her apartment, and somebody stopped her in her hallway and said, oh, you're the singer. And she said, oh, yes, and I'm so sorry if I've been bothering you. He's like, no, I love it. It's amazing. You know, it was so incredibly beautiful, and I love listening to you. I look forward to your rehearsal time because I get to listen to and hear you singing. And so that's responsive energy. That is somebody coming to you that you're not seeking out, and they're saying, oh my gosh, you're really good at this. Pay attention to that. Sometimes you have to hear that over and over and over again before it sinks in and you go, oh wow, I think I might actually be really good at this, right? So pay attention. Oh, now I'm going the opposite direction. Told you it's not going to be perfect. Okay. So here's the other side of the one thing, right? Is that it probably, unless you're already living out your destiny and you're really like on target, the one thing that you're really good at may have a lot of negative connotations associated with it, automatic negative thoughts. So what do you believe? What stories have you told about your one thing? Right? So often, like I've already said, a lot of times we devalue our one thing because it's so easy for us. It comes so easy that we're just like, nobody would pay for this. It can't be important. It can't matter to anybody. It can't really make a difference because it's easy. Can't everybody do this, right? No, not everybody can, right? And so we often have these automatic thoughts that just pop into our head that say, poof, that's not really that meaningful or important. And the other thing is we might have stories that come from other people. So for example, I believed I could never make money writing. Now, let's be real. There's not a lot of money in writing, but there's a lot of money involved with other things that you can build around writing, right? You can build a platform with writing and then use that platform for something else. There might not be a lot of money in making music per se for everybody, but you can build a platform, or you can teach music, or you can do a lot of other things. And so there might be narratives that you have, or maybe it's not respectable. Maybe you wanted to go into social work and your mom wanted you to be a doctor, right? And you hate being a doctor, but you wanted to go into social work or law or something completely different. So what kinds of narratives are you telling yourself? Pay attention to the automatic negative thoughts that are happening in your head, especially around your one thing, and start to rethink it and ask yourself how you can rework the narrative to empower and encourage yourself. And you'll probably do some work around that in your workbook and for your homework. Now, I also want to introduce you to the bouncer. The bouncer is a very interesting guy, okay? And I want you to understand this. This is something that I learned from, I had a coach. Her name is Deb Erickson, so I want to give her full credit because this is not my invention, this is hers, but it's really powerful stuff. So there's a bundle of nerves in the base of your brain, like right about here, and it's called the reticular activator. The reticular activator. And it has a number of different jobs, but one of its jobs is to help filter everything that your senses bring into your brain, into your consciousness, right? So because if you let everything that you are currently sensing through your five senses and even your sixth, if you were able to bring all of that into your consciousness, you would go crazy. Like you just wouldn't be able to process it all. So the reticular activator, what that does is it is the thing that decides what your brain, your conscious brain, is going to pay attention to, and then filters everything else into its subconscious. So what does that mean for you? And what does that have to do with a bouncer? So if you think about your conscious brain as a nightclub, okay, and this is where Deb Erickson comes in. You think about that conscious brain as a nightclub, and you think about the reticular activator as the bouncer to that nightclub, then the bouncer is going to let in only what the nightclub manager said it should let in, right? So think about a club in the city or something, right? The certain clubs let in certain kinds of people, right? Certain clubs only let in young women and men or whatever, okay? Well, the nightclub manager of your head comes from the voices that were speaking into your life between the ages of birth to about 7 years old. And that's when your core personality is formed. And then in other very highly impactful emotional moments, moving forward, certain things that happen through your teenage years, although most of your teenage years are the highly impactful emotional moments, right? You know what I mean? So like teenage years, young adulthood, those things are going to be pivotal and core elements of your personality, right? And so what happens is, if when you were young, the nightclub manager, who might be the voices of your primary caretakers or people who were important to you, gave you messaging that said, for example, writers never make any money. You can't be an artist and make any money. Oh, poor people suck and rich people are mean, right? Or maybe instead of that, maybe that there's something noble about being rich and about being poor, and rich people are mean and bad drivers and they always drive red sports cars, and they're bad drivers. Like somehow these messages get put into your brain. Well, what happens is that's the nightclub manager is telling the bouncer, the reticular activator, to only let in evidence that confirms that story, right? So now what's going to happen is every time you meet a rich person, you're going to notice everything that they say that's negative and mean or whatever. You're going to start noticing stories that confirm that narrative, even though there might be a rich person standing right next to the jerky rich person. There could be another rich person standing right next to him, and she's super nice, or he's super nice and really cool and kind and very generous and very socially aware and all of these other things. But the bouncer has been programmed to only let the jerky one in, okay? And so what happens is, if you have a narrative in your life that says, I can't make money doing the thing that I love, let's just take writing. I can't make money writing. Then what's going to happen is you're only going to find opportunities in which you can't make money writing. It's not woo-woo universe stuff. It's simple neurobiology, okay? That's all it is. So what happens is we need to retrain the brain. And you do actually, I want you to know that your brain actually does create something physical when you have a thought. So thoughts become things, okay? Your brain, every time you have a new thought, your brain creates a protein. And the more times that your brain thinks that thought, the more protein you have of that particular kind you have in your brain. So the more you have to kind of retrain your brain and build up those proteins in your brain that support the nice rich person, right? That support the evidence for that. And then you'll start to see that manifest in your life. Again, it's not like some woo-woo crazy prosperity gospel stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. It is simply cognitive reprogramming. That's it, okay? But you have to pay attention to it. And the first step to making those changes, to understanding how your brain is filtering out what you see and what you have in your life, the first step to that is simple awareness. So start paying attention. Write down the negative thoughts that you have when you sit there and you think about, becoming a writer or whatever your one thing might be. Think about what are the negative thoughts what does the voice say that's not very supportive in your head. And then maybe start to think about where did that come from and start thinking about the thought that you want to replace it with. Okay. That was a big one. Okay, ready. All right. So obligations, drains, and shoulds. These are the things that creep into life as we become adults. Life is filled with obligations, but some of them we just do and we don't even know why. Now, sometimes obviously there are things that we want to do, right? So like my kids' soccer games. I love going to my kids' soccer games, right? It's exciting. It's exciting to watch them play. It's exciting to see my daughter get her goals. It's exciting to see my son stop a goal when he's in goalie. But there are some things that you want to do, right? And that, again, that's the point. You have to live life on purpose. But there are some obligations that creep up on us that we didn't know. We were like, wait, hold on a second. Why do I have to be the one to do that? A very perfect example is somehow in my family, this thing creeps up on me where everybody says, Carrie, can you tell so-and-so that we're all going to meet at this time? No, you tell them yourself. Like, why am I the social calendar manager of the entire family? But it creeped up on me because I said yes once, and then I said yes again, and then I would do it, and then I would find myself in the middle of trying to figure out everybody's schedule until finally I said, I'm not doing this anymore. This doesn't need to take up my emotional space and my mental space, right? And there were a lot of shoulds and a lot of have tos included. Oh, well, I really should do this because my mom doesn't really text. And I should do this because so-and-so wants to see my mom and that's a good thing. So I should really do this. But you know what? My mom can learn how to text and so-and-so can call my mom and all of this other stuff, right? So I did not need to say yes to that anymore. So I had to examine it. I had to step back and go, okay, I'm going to examine this. And is this really something that I want to do? Or am I doing it only out of a sense of guilt and obligation? Now, sometimes the answer is going to be yes, this is something I should do. And that's okay. The point, as always, is to stay intentional. So I'll give you an example from a long time ago in my life where I said yes out of simple manipulation and guilt. And I immediately turned right around and I said, you know what? I take my yes back. I'm not doing it. So I was absolutely exhausted. I was working. I had been sick with like some kind of horrible bronchitis. And I was working full time and going to school full time, not full time, but I was going to school. I was taking at least 2 or 3 classes. And so I was tired. I was exhausted. And I had finally come to a point where I was going to have a week off, no school, no work, no nothing. And I remember being just so relieved and looking forward to it. And I was involved in a community theater at the time, and there was nothing on the schedule for me at that point in time. And this guy calls from the community theater, and he wanted me to stage manage a show. And in order to stage manage the show, the 1 week that I would have off would be the week that I had to go for rehearsal after rehearsal after rehearsal. And I was just like, oh, I don't want to. And he was like, please, we don't have anybody else. It would help us out so much, blah, 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 blah. And he kept pouring it on. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, fine. And I said yes, purely out of guilt. I felt bad for the guy. But I was so resentful as soon as we hung up. And I was so upset because I had been so looking forward to that week and I so needed it to just refresh, to heal my body, to rest. And after I sat down on my couch for a few minutes, I was like, you know what? No, I am not doing this. And I called him right back and I said, listen, I'm really sorry, but no. And I felt bad for saying no to him for about 5 minutes. And then I was back to feeling, relieved and free and wonderful. And so the point is, with all of this, obligations, with drains, with shoulds, is to pay attention and make sure that you're being intentional and really making a choice and not just going along with what you think you're supposed to do. I want to make sure that I'm explaining drains. Obligations and shoulds, I think, are pretty self-explanatory, but a drain is one of those things that, you do it and you do it and you do it, but it just drains you. You're like, oh my gosh, it's time to do this again. I don't want to do this again, right? So you want to be paying attention to what that might be. So some examples of shoulds are, I should take over the family business. I should volunteer for the bake sale. I should go along with it because I don't want to cause trouble. No is one of the most powerful words you will ever use. I promise you. Okay, as I just explained, with the whole stage managing thing, learning to use the word no decisively, not meanly, but just decisively, is going to be one of the most powerful things and skills that you can ever learn. Because when you are able to say no without feeling guilt, without feeling like you're letting a ton of people down, you will experience so much freedom to be able to go and do the things that you actually want to do. Now, again, I'm not saying that you're going to say no to everything. I'm not saying go be a jerk. I'm saying be intentional, make a choice every single time with every decision. Don't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to go do that. You make a choice. So one of the ways that you can do that to make a choice and relieve some of the pressure and the guilt that you might feel is you can change your shoulds and coulds or change your shoulds to coulds. So instead of saying, I should do this, you're going to say, I could do this, or I could do that. So, for example, instead of I should take over the family business, you could say, I could take over the family business, or I could sell it to create the business that I want. I could bake 5 million muffins for the bake sale, or I could go to the food store and buy some donuts. I should, I should make everybody's social calendar arrangements in the family, or I can teach them all how to text and they can do it themselves, right? So there are some ideas or some examples of how you could take your shoulds and make them into coulds, and it's really powerful. Now, here's the thing, the trick to it is what it does is it empowers yourself to think outside the box and consider other possibilities, right? Because should is a very confining thing. It's only one thing. You should do this and nothing else, right? But could makes you go, well, I could do that, or I could do that, or I could do that, or I could do nothing, right? And it empowers you to make a choice. And again, that's what we want to do. Now, I think I want to talk about automation. You'll go over this a lot in your homework, but I was talking about drains earlier. Drains are those things that just really get to you and you're like, I really hate this. Why do I have to do this again? And I want you to look at, I think we're going to be talking about it, delegation and automation. So we're going to talk about ways that you can take things off of your plate. Some of these shoulds and coulds, we're going to take them off your plate by either delegating them or automating them. And I'm going to give you examples on how you can do that as well. Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm reminding myself that if that didn't make it into my slides, that I want to make sure I remind you. Okay, so we're going to talk about synergies and intersections. So this is where you're going to look at your list that you did last week. First thing that you're going to look for, And again, this is a very open-minded exercise. This is not something that you have to like take out your spreadsheet and build diagrams and algorithms for, okay? This is something, and you are going to do a mind map, but it's a handwritten mind map, you guys. And listen, I know that you want to do it on a computer. Don't do it on a computer, okay? There's something that happens, and it's been proven scientifically. There's something that happens in your brain when you take a pen to paper, or a pencil in this case, okay? There's something that happens that lights up different parts of your brain that we are trying to access, okay? So no computer for this. Take a pen or a pencil and put it to paper, a bigger paper than this Post-it note, but put it to paper, okay? There's paper in your workbook. And you're going to identify synergies, which are things that naturally seem to go together. So for example, you love kids, you love teaching reading. Those things naturally go together, right? So that's kind of a no-brainer. Intersections, however, are those things that at first glance may not automatically appear to go together, but that can intersect to create a future purpose. So for example, let's say you love to play piano. That's a skill that you have, and it's a joy, right? It's a passion, it's a joy. It's something that you love to do. And you also have a passion for the elderly, right? So those two things don't necessarily seem like they might go together, but they could potentially intersect to form a future purpose, because you could potentially play piano for elderly people at a senior center, or perhaps you can go and teach the elderly how to play piano. My mom started studying how to play piano when she was in her 70s. So, maybe there's some way that those two things can intersect. So you don't have to have it all worked out exactly right now. You just have to kind of start to see the connections and maybe go, I wonder if there's a way that I can do this and connect it with that. I wonder. So you're going to look for those two things. Okay, well, these are the synergies. These are no-brainers. These definitely go together. These are places where these synergies and other stuff and other things might intersect, where I can see something budding there. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I could see something maybe. Okay, it's a very, again, you want to play. You're just playing. You don't have to have everything worked out. And you're going to create a mind map with a pen or a pencil and paper, no computer. Okay, I wish I could draw one of those little circles with a line through it and a computer. I'm not that good. Okay, all right, here's the art of delegating. I knew it was in here, but I got worried that it wasn't. Okay, so the art of delegating and automating, I should have put in the heading, is so, so important. So this is where you're going to review those things that drain you. A long time ago, when life coaching was first getting started, I took an online email life coaching course. And I don't remember the name of the woman who taught it, but one thing that I remember from that was the idea of tolerances. And it is something that I have initiated in my life over and over again because it was so good. So tolerances are those little annoying things that drive you crazy. And when they're in the moment, you don't have time or energy to deal with it once and for all in the moment. So it keeps coming up for you. But then when it comes up for you constantly, it drains your energy, it frustrates you, and just shifts your energy into this yucky place, right? So as an example, maybe, let's imagine that you have a closet and it's this huge closet and the light bulb is out, but the light bulb is really hard to reach. So every morning you start your day off and you can't see what you're doing. You can't see any of your clothes. It's really dark. That puts you in a bad mood. You start your day late because you couldn't see anything. But you don't have time in that moment because you're trying to get out the door and get ready to work, to go and change the light bulb. And then when you come home, the last thing that you want to do is change the light bulb, right? So you probably don't even think about the light bulb again until the next morning when the same thing happens over and over again. So what she taught us to do was to make a list of all of those tolerances: the squeaky cabinet door, the light bulb that's out in the closet, all of the other things, the pile of books in the corner, all of those things that have been driving you crazy, but in the moments of everyday life, just don't seem important enough to deal with. And you take some time, an hour or two over the weekend, to just deal with them. Just get them all done once and for all. So review the things that drain you. Okay. And sometimes those could be things that you're good at, but not great at. Remember last week we talked about things you're good at and things you're great at. And we talked about the difference. Sometimes what happens is things that you're good at, just because you're good at them, you end up doing a whole lot and you don't necessarily like them, but you're good at them. They kind of come easy for you, but you're not great at them. You're just merely good, but you end up doing them because you're good at them. Is there somebody better at it than you? If there is, give it to that person, because most likely they're great at it and it comes super easy to them and they actually enjoy it. Okay, so can you delegate? Look at these things that you can delegate, or can you automate? So a great example of automation is my bills. I hate paying bills, and it's the task of paying bills is something that I will put off and put off and put off, which is a problem, right? Because if I let myself just put it off, then what happens is the bills would never get paid. I would be late, and it wasn't even that I didn't have the money. It was just because I hated paying the bills, right? So instead of doing that, I automated. I go through and I make sure that every single bill that occurs on a regular basis gets automated. And I never have to think about it. All I have to do is go in, check my balances once in a while, check the bills, make sure they're getting paid the right amount. Nothing has changed. And life is so much easier. I've automated my food shopping. Food shopping used to take me like 2.5 hours out of my weekend. I hated it. I was resentful of it. It drove me insane. I stopped doing that. Now I do Shop Right from Home, which is a service where I pay somebody to shop my food shopping for me and they deliver it right to my house. And now we just have to put the groceries away. These are things that I chose to automate because they drove me crazy. You may have other things. Can you delegate it to somebody? Can you automate it? Now, it's important to understand that even you might not be in a position today in which you can delegate or automate these things. You might not have the resources available to you. In my business, I made a list of tasks that I was going to have my assistant do long before I was able to afford an assistant. The number one thing was scheduling. I found that I could easily spend at least an hour and a half per week just putting all of the appointments that people wanted to make with me on my calendar. It was ridiculous. I was losing so much time that I could have been spending writing or doing something else. And so I knew that from the get-go, the first thing that I was going to have my assistant do as soon as I was able to hire an assistant was handle scheduling. Well, knowing and having that list of what I was going to do when as soon as I could afford it, it meant I had to know how much I could afford to spend on it. How much did it cost? I needed to know then how much I needed to make in order to pay for that. And it created a very clear plan of action so that when I was in a position to hire an assistant, I said, hey, hallelujah, I'm in a position to hire an assistant now. I'm making enough money. I know exactly what I want her to do. I was able to find her like that because I knew exactly the skill set I needed. So make your list of things that you want to delegate and automate now, because having it in your mind, remember the bouncer, you're telling the bouncer what you're looking for, and you're going to be able to find a solution. Your subconscious is going to bring it up, and it's going to start letting those messages into your consciousness for solutions. That's how it works. Neuroscience. That's it. Okay? All right. Okay. We are almost done. Obstacles. It's important to understand and identify what your obstacles are, and pretending that you're not going to have any obstacles is baloney, okay? Because any successful person knows that there's going to be obstacles. You just know that they're going to happen. You can probably identify a lot of them already. Some of them are going to be internal obstacles, fear, procrastination, negative self-talk. Some of them are going to be external obstacles. Time limitations, work obligations, family obligations, right? So you need to know what your obstacles are, potential obstacles are, and plan for them. Make a plan for how you're going to be successful. So for example, let's say you're working in the health arena, right? You're trying to figure out a purpose in a health arena. And one of the things that your goals is to lose weight, right? And one of the things that you want to do is to lose weight is to eat healthfully. And you know that one of the obstacles is that you never have time to make your lunch in the morning. And so you end up eating a really disgusting lunch. So knowing that that's an obstacle, you can make a plan to overcome that obstacle. But if you're not willing to recognize that as an obstacle, you'll never make a plan and you'll just continue to do the same crazy. Okay? So it empowers you, identifying the obstacles now empowers you to overcome them with less stress later. Like I said, pretending obstacles are not going to come up is unrealistic. And preparing for obstacles is a part of prioritizing, which is a key skill for living a life on purpose. We're going to talk more about prioritizing later, but if you don't do it, the work is incomplete. Okay, so if you don't prepare for obstacles, the work is incomplete. We are going to dig a lot deeper into obstacles later in the course, but for right now, I just want you to start thinking about them. Just list some potential obstacles that might come up for you, internal and external. Internal, for example, could be, I don't get up and exercise, or I always promise I'm going to exercise in the morning and then I just keep hitting snooze on my alarm. External might be, I don't have the money for a gym, right? So those are two different ways to look at obstacles, but it's really important. Just brain dump them. Just do a free brain dump of what comes to mind when you think of obstacles. Okay, there was a lot of information. Feel free to go back and review it. Get your homework done. There's a lot of work to do in the workbook that has a lot to do with this, a little bit of some extra stuff in there too. Make sure you do that. Do your homework before you watch your next class. Your next class will come next week. Make sure that you watch it ahead of time. Do your homework before the next step, because it all builds on each other. So you want to make sure you're keeping up with the homework, okay? All right, so next week we are going to be talking about the dream step. Step 3 is dream. So we'll talk about that next time. See you later.